Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first in our what we hope will be a series of engaging and perhaps compelling conversations. My name is Martin Woods, and I'm joined by my colleague and co-host, Justin Muscolino. We are members of the Global Compliance Institute, and in my capacity as chairman of that organisation, welcome. I've long held a belief that when we're confronting and fighting financial crime, we are being asked to become detectives. And for that reason, we've called this the Aml Detective Show, working with you, engaging with you, and bringing the message and the training from the Global Compliance Institute. We hope to help you to fulfill that role and become true AML detectives. To those of you who are not already in that position, respecting the fact that some of you will, like me, be a former police officer, you'll be a detective. And before we dive deep into this, let me pass it back to Justin so he can introduce himself, and then we'll set out what we hope to achieve over the coming weeks and months.
Thank you very much, Martin. I'm excited to be here and be co-hosting with you in this series. So my name is Justin Muscolino. I've been working for financial institutions for over 20 years, and I've seen a lot during my time. The application of real-world instances on financial institutions, how people navigate internally to really, identify those red flags, those issues when it comes to each step of the process. So I'm excited to talk about it. In addition, I joined GCI recently as an advisor, writer, doing podcasts with Martin, and among other things that I'm really excited about. Now, Martin, I'm curious to learn a little bit more about you.
My name, as it says on the tin, Martin Woods. I'm actually a former police detective who, for the latter part of my police career, I specialised in the investigation of international money laundering and travel the world, giving evidence in cases in New York and Miami and different parts of the world. The principle of money laundering is criminals commit crimes in one country and seek to move the money abroad. And so we were in the export business at that point, and many criminals sought to launder their money from other countries into London. And at that point, we were in the import business. Around about 2001, I left the police service and joined ABN AMRO Bank. As a anti-money laundering financial crime officer. I transitioned through a couple of banks. I ended up with a bank called Wachovia, where I'm known for blowing the whistle against what I discovered was the bank's business of laundering lots of money for Mexican drug cartels and for Russian organised crime groups, as well as some entities in Ukraine. Quite topical today, given the actions taking place in Ukraine as we speak on this podcast. So I'm a consultant. I help clients to improve their controls. I'm really passionate about trying to change the outcomes and look at this differently. I want to be provocative in these conversations and be thought leading and provoke thinking to change the way we do things to get better outcomes.
I got a question for you. So my first question is, and I have not met one in person or in any other means, have you ever met a money launderer before? I mean, do they all wear suits? Do they all have mustaches? Like, are they what they are on TVs and movies?
Well, they wear suits primarily. They do wear suits, and yes, I've met several of them. I've met lots. I've never met a money launderer who was not a nice person. The logic being, it is a deceptive business. The objective is to make other people believe the money, the assets, the securities are legitimate and genuine. And to that end, you can either put a gun to somebody's head or charm them and make them believe in you. Commonly, I've had people in banks say to me, he can't be, and it's normally a he, can't be a money launderer because he's a nice person. Ladies and gentlemen, that's your first red flag.
So interesting, like we come from two different jurisdictions. You're in the UK, I'm in the US. What is, if we look at like AML strategy or the regulators, what does it look like in the UK?
I actually don't know what the UK government's public policy anti-money laundering strategy is.
That's interesting. I was doing some reading over the last couple of weeks. Here in the US, we have different regulators that oversee money laundering activities. We have FinCEN. I don't have to tell you something we have OFAC, BSA laws, USA Patriot. We have all of this. And a lot of the reading that I've looked at the priorities and the strategies for US institutions. And this is not new. I mean, we're looking at corruption. I mean, cybercrime is increasing, and especially with the creation of cryptocurrencies as an outlet to launder money. We have terrorist financing, fraud, and this transnational criminal organization activity. So, to say the least, there's a lot on the plate in the US, and I'm sure it's similar in the UK, right?
There's a lot on the plate, but you can't eat everything on the plate. The strategy tells you where you're going to focus, and I do think we've choked. We in the global AMA community are making a mistake of trying to do everything, which is contrary to the application of a risk-based approach, which is what many people have implemented and actually is now being codified in the US with the advent of the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2020. That said, I think we need to ask ourselves, and we'll do it in a future episode, is the risk-based approach actually working?
Everybody here is risk-based, right? And people, I don't know if many people know what it is. It's like saying that if it's not risk-based, it's like a generic approach that every institution takes. But, no two institutions are really alike. So when you look at it from a risk-based, what's the risk within your organization? How does it differ from another? Everybody offers different products, services, have different staff, different, locations around the world that really comprise like an approach that you take based on the risk of your institution. So I always find it interesting. I hear that thrown around so much. And, a lot of people out there don't know exactly what it is. What do you think?
Well, okay. So something you said about everything being different. There's a great podcast I watched, and I can't remember the man's name, but he took many people out of Ku Klux Klan, and his basis to start conversations with people is we have more in common than we actually have not in common. And so to the risk-based approach, when he said all institutions are different, they are, but they probably have far more in common than they have that's different. And I wonder to that then, if another question we want to pose, and we'll talk about it, is have we over-imagined AML?
You know what? I want to say yes. What's interesting? You mentioned that movie. It was called Black Klansman, and I actually watched it a few weeks ago. It was really interesting. I actually like that movie a lot, but it does show that anyone can infiltrate any organization if they have the appropriate means and methods. So, you think about relevancy to, criminals infiltrating financial institution. It has some commonalities if you think about it, because there are different means for getting through to an organization.
Yeah, and so many people, anybody who's heard me speak before will say there are two very important things I consider in the role I perform. One is that launderers are primarily limited by their own imagination and our collective endeavor to stop them. That said, if you add another saying to that, the one that says, if something is not broken, it doesn't need to be fixed. Have we really broken any of the standard money laundering typologies that we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years? If we haven't, then the launderer doesn't need to fix them, does he?
Well, the launderer just comes up with new and creative ways, right?
He doesn't need to be that innovative. He doesn't need to be that smart, because with respect, we're not that smart. David Lewis said in 2019, and he'd been the FATF secretary for 3 or 4 years by then. He's been in the AML since we first met when I was a detective, and he was in the government in the UK. So we've both been doing it for a long time. And he said, we're all doing badly. Some aren't doing as badly as others, but we are all doing badly because, let's go back to the beginning, the strategy is wrong.
That really interesting. Thing of it is, like when we talk about all these different aspects, we also have to concentrate a little bit on what financial institutions are doing right and wrong, right? And if you think about it, let's just take the beginning process, right? You're onboarding a customer. You think it's easy for a criminal to lie about who they are, what they do, and the documents they supply to actually become a customer of a financial institution?
Yes, but before you go too far down that route, when you're looking at what's going on, if you were laundering money, Justin, would you open an account in your own name? Or even if you're laundering money, would you open an account in a false name? And would you specifically use a personal checking account to launder money?
Personally, I would go nowhere near my name, nowhere near my social security number, nowhere near my details. Absolutely not. I mean, then you're just destined to get caught that much easier.
Okay, so would you use a false name? Let me rephrase this. Let's imagine you are going to use a false name, but would the product you're using be a personal checking account?
No, I mean, whatever I come up with creatively, or I guess not creatively, I have to have the proper backing and documentation to back it up, right?
Yeah, you do. And actually, you have to imagine as well that there is a spectrum of money launderers. But what are we looking for? Are we looking for people who are laundering vast sums of money that cause significant harm to communities and destabilize financial institutions because there is too much dirty money going through them?
What do you consider a vast sum? That's one question I have.
Well, okay, so to that extent, if I can get near it, I want to be looking for millions. If I can get to it, I want to be looking for millions. I want to actually have an impact and do something here. Let me ask you something right about the way the money laundering works. And the great thing we're doing here right now is we are, ladies and gents, we are scattergun. We're going in all kinds of different directions, but this is very deliberate for our first episode. The reason I want to look for the millions is I want to make a difference. I want to do something big. And actually, most transaction monitoring now is looking for an unusual transaction. Let me just slightly digress a little bit. Justin, have you ever had an unusual transaction in your bank account?
In my own personal bank account, I believe once, but it wasn't a big amount.
If it had generated an alert, it would have been one of the many, many, many false positives. And this is another thing that David Lewis and I touched upon. Risk-based, no. Intelligence-led, yes. And we're going to have a great conversation about that, because if we begin to use far more intelligence, and that includes how do launderers operate. So one of the people we'll bring onto this conversation will be a money launderer. Okay, we'll speak to our money launderer, but fear not, he's a good guy because he used to launder money as an undercover agent for the federal government of the United States of America. But he'll tell us how he did it. More importantly, what's equally important in that, Justin, just think about it in the negative. He'll tell us how he wouldn't have done it. Now, why is that so important?
It's really important because you have to think about, how does a criminal mind operate, They do have to strategize about proper ways and then ways they could potentially get caught. So if they look at an institution in itself, you have to strategize appropriately or you are going to get caught. So hearing from a money launderer on, I don't want to say the right way to do it because that just sounds so negative. But you have to learn from that mindset about what you're looking for from the inside. What they would do and potentially what they wouldn't do. So that just kind of aids our audience in determining what to look for a little bit more, right?
Absolutely. And the wouldn't do issue, and this is where we need to actually re-engineer some of our thinking in the world of AML, is what can we discount and stop looking at? Where can we actually say there is a close to zero risk, and therefore it will equally have a close to zero attention or application of our resources? That's another conversation we'll have about what can we do less of to be more effective and more efficient and give us more resources to do more of. It is great working with you, Justin. I look forward to doing the same again sometime soon.